It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Well, it's live from Moscow for the last time on this visit. But thank you for your close attention to this matter. Donald Trump is not Jesus Christ. He cannot walk on water, not in the Straits of Trump or the Gulf of America. He is unable to turn loaves and fishes into enough to feed the multitude because he's already eaten, and to hell with the multitude. And he's only interested in loaves if there's cheeseburgers in amongst them. He cannot turn water into Diet Coca-Cola, although perhaps he'd be wise not to. It is the mother of all talk shows, and we are in for a humdinger of a show. Stay tuned. And it's turn them out time coming up quickly. In Britain, more quickly than anywhere else. Keir Starmer has fallen to fourth place in the public opinion polls, only a couple of weeks before the local elections in England and the national elections in Scotland and Wales. If Keir Starmer finishes in fourth place, he will not even last long enough to see the trial of the rent boys who allegedly arsoned him, who allegedly set fire to his motor cars and his properties. He'll be out before 4 o'clock in the morning on the day after the election. Merz has fallen to the lowest level ever suffered by any German chancellor. Macron is sitting on a throne by the tip of his backside and can fall off it at any time. And J.D. Vance played to a 3/4 empty conference last night. Even though the tickets were free, 3/4 of the people didn't turn up. It was the most ignominious humiliation of the shrinking J.D. Vance, who was set up to fail in Islamabad and is now being routinely humiliated by his boss, Donald Trump, and the rest of the American political class. The journalists are literally laughing at him. The New York Times coined what must be the newspaper headline of the 21st century when it quoted J.D. Vance telling His Holiness the Pope that he should be more careful in future when talking about theology. I'm not making that up. That really happened. J.D. Vance has only been a Catholic for just over 6 years, knows better about theology, you see, than the Chicago-born Pope. In fact, Trump has now fallen out with 1 billion Catholics around the world. Soon there'll be nobody left to fall out with. His polling ratings amongst the white working class blue-collar Americans has plummeted to catastrophic, unheard of levels. His ratings amongst ethnic minorities in the United States had already moved massively into the red, and I don't mean Republican red, I mean into deficit. His polling ratings amongst every class of people, except the extreme Zionist tiny minority, are now in very deep trouble. And he's fallen out with Signora Meloni. I don't know about you, but looking at their body language over the years, I rather thought that he fancied her and that it might actually be reciprocated. But she has damned him, not once, but twice this week, for the utterly gross, grotesque, and disrespectful way that he was speaking about the Pope. Note to Donald Trump, you may not know it, but the Vatican is actually in Rome, as is Signora Meloni. She damned him, he damned her back, and she damned him with words that will live forever. He said that she was the one that was unacceptable because she wanted to risk Iran getting nuclear weapons and dropping them on Italy, although why anyone would want to do that is, of course, a debatable point. But she fired back. Well, as I understand it, there are 9 countries in the world that have nuclear weapons, and none of them have ever threatened to send a nuclear weapon to Italy. In fact, of those 9, she said, only 1 country has ever used those nuclear weapons. She didn't name the country, but then she didn't have to. So he's fallen out with Meloni. He's fallen out again today with the government of Denmark, having reiterated his demand, not request, his demand to be given the territory of Greenland. One way or another, he said, the stars and stripes are going to fly over Greenland. He's already written off NATO, and they are preparing a NATO after the USA. They are preparing basically a dad's army, a dads and woke army. There'll be gay pride campaigners in it. There'll be 55-year-old men in it. They won't have very many weapons. They won't have much war materiel, certainly not from Britain, which has simultaneously today declared that the Ministry of Defence must find £3.5 billion worth of savings and at the same time prepare for World War III. Yes, they sent a guy who looked like Mr. Bean with gold braid weighing down his left shoulder so that he actually looked misshapen, who's never fought a war or a battle in his entire life, to tell us that we must all prepare for large-scale war in Europe. When I say he looked like Mr. Bean, I hope we've got a picture of him, because actually Mr. Bean was rather more prepossessing than him. So the British are not going to be contributing all that much to this European NATO. But the British are on their way back into the European Union. The Erasmus scheme was reinstated by Keir Starmer today. The proposal to give Britain Swiss-style access to the single market, a big major step towards rejoining the European Union, has already been agreed by the cabinet, and all it remains is for it to be agreed by the European Union, which, now that they've gotten rid of the Hungarian Prime Minister, will presumably be easier for von der Leyen and the other bureaucrats, eurocrats who run the EU to get whatever it is that they want. So Britain back into the EU, and NATO, which doesn't have the country which contributes 80% of its money and materiel and its soldiers. What could possibly go wrong? This major war they're planning in Europe, incidentally, is against the victors of Stalingrad, the victors of Kursk, the people who crushed Hitler in his lair in the rubble in Berlin. And sure as Zhukov predicted, the Europeans have never forgiven them. So we are now in a hiatus in the Persian Gulf. Well, I say hiatus, but the Americans just sent another 10,000 American soldiers to join the 50,000 American soldiers who are already there. Trump is boasting about the number of ships that are coming out of the Strait of Trump. Well, he wanted to call it the Strait of Trump, but he never said who, maybe the Vatican, said that he could not do that. It must be the Strait of Hormuz or the Hormuz Strait. Which is better, he asked. Well, they're both equally good. I tell you, the more you look at Donald Trump, the more you realize that this man has lost his mind. But his comparison of himself to the Messiah, which he laughably thought that we might believe was him comparing himself not to Jesus, but to a Red Cross doctor. Frankly, I'm not sure which is the less believable idea, that he saw himself as a Red Cross doctor or that he saw himself as Jesus Christ. It's quite clear, the blasphemy, the sacrilege involved in that tweet, and yet today he has doubled down on it. He's put out another from something called Irish for Trump. He has put out another meme of him in the arms of Jesus, admittedly made Jesus an inch or two taller than him. But the intent was very clear, that Donald Trump is divine, that Donald Trump is infallible, that Donald Trump has the finest character and the highest IQ and the greatest political grasp of any American president ever. And the fact that the polls and the impending elections in November make clear that he's going to be cleaned out, the Republicans are going to be cleaned out. As Mrs. Thatcher said, a souffle never rises twice. Donald Trump is not going to be the souffle that is the exception. Donald Trump is toast, and J.D. Vance will not even be the Republican Party's nominee to succeed him at the next presidential elections. Of that, I am certain. So it's a situation that we are experiencing both a blockade and a record number of ships evading the blockade, and Trump doesn't know which of these two mutually contradictory statistics to cheer. In fact, he cites in aid of his own position both statistics in the same interview. But China has already told the United States that they will under no circumstances be blockaded by Donald J. Trump and his navy far off the shores of the Persian Gulf. And the Iranians, if they have to, will rain down fire and thunder on the American ships anywhere near the Gulf and destroy them. That much is clear. That's why they are not approaching the Gulf. So you can't run a blockade from hundreds of kilometers away from the scene of the action. The American aircraft carriers actually sailed right around Africa in order to approach the theater of operations, because they dare not enter the Red Sea, which is controlled by Iran's ally, Ansar Allah, the armed forces of the Yemen. So we're in a state of total confusion, even so far as the propaganda messages are concerned. Trump says the Iranians have no air force, but I just saw their air force escorting the Chief Martial Law Administrator, CMLA as I call him, Field Marshal Munir of Pakistan, into Tehran's airport this very evening. The talks apparently are ongoing. Face-to-face talks may be ongoing in 2 days' time. That's how close we are to the end of the war. Trump told Fox News the war was over just yesterday. In which case, why another 10,000 soldiers? Why threaten things that you're simply not in a position to carry out the threat? Why threaten a blockade when you cannot blockade? A blockade is an act of war. The Iranians would be perfectly legally entitled to sink any ship seeking to blockade their ports. But they're not blockaded anyway. China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan are just 4 of the countries that are sailing freely through the Straits of Hormuz. Trump says he's doing this for China, at the same time as warning China to stop selling weapons to Iran. Then he claims that China has accepted this demand and will not sell any more weapons to Iran, forcing the Chinese to say, "We have never discussed this matter with Donald Trump. We neither confirm nor deny that we are selling weapons to Iran. If we are or if we are not, this is an entirely sovereign matter for China, and China does not accept orders from foreign countries." Anyway, all the air traffic going in these big transport planes coming from China, I mean, they may be filled with noodles, I don't know, but it's a bit more likely that they're filled with defensive material to at least dampen the ardor of the American armed forces should Trump decide to send them back into the fray. I'm going to take a flyer. I know that this is not the view of everyone watching. Still less is it the view of others. But I believe Donald Trump. I believe the Iran war is over. Unless, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu takes a hand. Unless Netanyahu so viciously attacks Iran that Iran will have no alternative but to rain down the now familiar death and destruction on the settler state of Israel, which will in turn put pressure on Donald Trump to re-enter the war. I believe the war is over. I don't believe that we will see any further mass bombardment, still less any bombardment of the vital infrastructure, the civilian infrastructure of Iran. Now, I may be left with egg on my face come Sunday's show, but that's my prediction. I believe that even Trump can read the runes. Even J.D. Vance can read a 3/4 empty auditorium, so empty that Erica Kirk didn't turn up. She says it was for her personal security. I think it was because she'd seen the ticket sales, even though the sales were free. So the war leaders, the leaders of the Western camp, which has sacrificed everything for Netanyahu, sacrificed their entire political position in their home country for Netanyahu, are all going down. Even my own party, the Workers' Party of Britain, we will win seats in 2 weeks' time in Manchester, in Rochdale, in Bury, in Oldham, in Birmingham. Even we as a small socialist party are going to win a super victory, series of victories in these cities, if not in others. Halifax, I forgot to mention, where we definitely will be winning seats. The Greens are going to win a shed load of seats from Labour. They may destroy Labour's position in the capital city of London. Reform, despite the trials and tribulations of Nigel Farage, are still mopping up not just the mass of the Conservative vote, but a very substantial section of traditional Labour voters whose ancestors were voting Labour, but whose great-great-grandchildren will definitely not be. So the humiliation of Keir Starmer, of Herr Merz, of President Macron is, of course, something to rejoice about. But unless they're replaced by people who genuinely mean it when they say that they favour sovereignty, unless they're replaced by people who really want to make Britain great again, make France great again, make Germany great again, oh, forget that, I'm not so sure about that one. Unless they're replaced by people who will genuinely put the national interest above the supranational interest, if they're replaced by people who are going to support the kind of thing that was announced today by the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, the day after the downgrading of Britain's economic prospects was headline news in the country. Britain is the worst placed country in the Western world. In the coming economic storm, worst place. I mean, worse than Bulgaria. I mean, worse than anywhere in the Western world. And on the day after, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, an inky-fingered clerkess called Rachel Reeves, announced another £752,000 million, £750 million. She promised to little Zelensky, the thief of Kiev, as well as 12,000 drones, which we in Britain have built and are about to donate to little Zelensky over the next 12 months. We better hope we don't need them ourselves. What do you think? Well, we've got the one and only Pulitzer Prize winner, Chris Hedges, coming up after this short break. Stay tuned.
The king of Saudi Arabia, King Faisal, at this time said something incredible. You can't imagine it being said nowadays by any of these Arab leaders. He said, "You are the ones who can't live without oil. Our ancestors lived on dates, and we can easily go back and live that way."
Yeah, but you can't live without oil, just for completion. Now, there was a man, a real king, a real Arab, a real Muslim, King Faisal, who quadrupled the price of oil to the Westerners who needed it, in defense of the Palestinian people, in opposition to the settler apartheid state of Israel and its land grabs. How different. You know, I've never admitted this to you, but I was actually well old enough to remember that historical fact that you have just cited. And I was, in fact, quite prominent politically at that very moment. And I wrote about it in my audiobook, Street Fighting Man, in some detail. So I'm bitterly aware of how the Arab world in 1973 has declined as I look at the pitiful performance of the Arab leaders who can only convene to denounce Iran for retaliating to a massive American and Israeli attack upon themselves, but couldn't lift a finger even to deliver bread to the starving Palestinians in Gaza.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, nearly 50,000 people have voted on tonight's poll, although, again, fewer than 500 of them were on X. It has become beyond ridiculous. We have 42,000 votes from YouTube alone and 499 from X. Censored? Well, will Trump's Hormuz blockade force Iran to surrender? That's the question. Will Trump's Hormuz blockade force Iran to surrender? Not many of you think the answer to that conundrum is yes. So the quantum is the most important thing now. Get voting on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you're one of the vanguard, then you're supporting me on patreon.com/George Galloway, and you can vote there too. The number to call the show is toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Pulitzer Prize winner, former head of the Middle East Bureau of the once celebrated New York Times, is Chris Hedges, who is, of course, the host and the writer of the Chris Hedges Report. He's always generous with his time on the mother of all talk shows. Chris, welcome back to the show. Let's start with the big enchilada. Is Donald Trump Jesus Christ? You're a believing man like me. Did he mean to say he was a Red Cross doctor, or did he mean to say he was the Messiah?
Well, given the illustration, it was pretty clear that that was the Messiah. If he thought that was a doctor, that's probably another example of his cognitive decline. Look, I mean, his megalomania has no limits. He's posted himself as royalty, and his face adorns on large banners, federal buildings, and he's renamed the Kennedy Center the Donald J. Trump and John F. Kennedy Center and the Institute for Peace, and and there's nobody around him to essentially curb his limitless desire for self-promotion. So yeah, I think he didn't make it, but he posted it.
He did, and he admitted that he posted it and couldn't see what all the fuss was about. But he also portrayed himself earlier on the death of Pope Francis as a candidate for the Pope. Maybe only Scottish viewers will understand that, being an orange man, that was unlikely, but he did indeed pose with mitre and staff as the Pope. And he certainly alienated even the American cardinals, who are conservative to T. He has alienated Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. He's alienated the Pope himself by getting into a slanging match. And your own former newspaper, the New York Times, in what I think is a priceless headline today, has J.D. Vance warning the Pope to be more careful about matters of theology. That belongs in the you couldn't make it up drawer. He's on a jihad against the Catholic Church.
Well, he's kind of on a jihad against everybody, including our former allies in Europe. He's alienated Saudi Arabia. He insulted Mohammed bin Salman to his face in Mar-a-Lago. He's turning the United States. I think, before Trump had certainly reached, along with Israel, pariah status. But he's elevating that pariah status even beyond the ineptitude and tone deafness of the Biden administration, which preceded him, especially in the Middle East. He is, a crude and vulgar and not particularly intelligent figure who is drunk on his own narcissism and his ability, unfortunately, to wield the power of the American military, much to the disaster of, it's certainly boomeranged or backfired on the United States, the war with Iran, but we've seen it with Venezuela. He's he's imposed an oil blockade on Cuba and is threatening to take over Cuba. He's threatened to seize Greenland. I mean, there's kind of no limit.
So let's turn to the Iran war then. He seems to me to be speaking in tongues. He, at one and the same moment, says he wants the Straits of Hormuz, which he literally requested that it should be renamed the Strait of Trump. He's demanding that it be open, whilst at the same time saying that nothing will be allowed in or out of it. He is continuing to threaten the civilizational end of Iran, whilst telling Fox News in the White House yesterday that the war was over. He has talks coming up in 2 days' time, we're told, but has just transferred another 10,000 US soldiers to the Gulf. Is it war or is it peace? Do you know?
I'm not sure he knows hour by hour, but I think that it's penetrated the White House that the 40-day conflict with Iran did not go well for the United States. And Iran has shown that it has the ability to, through asymmetrical warfare, inflict tremendous damage, not only in terms of its targeting, and its targeting has been quite precise, taking out the radar stations, rendering the Israelis and the Americans blind to incoming Iranian attacks, hitting oil facilities in Kuwait and other countries in the Gulf, doing certainly significant damage to Israel. Remember, the carrier group in the United States kept itself 1,000 miles away because of a fear of Iranian drones and attacks. Really, I think when those talks began, I'm not sure the American delegation realized it. I mean, you have Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. First of all, this is his son-in-law and his golfing partner who don't know anything about the Middle East, and not only that, are Zionist assets. And I'm not sure Vance, who's certainly probably more intelligent than the other two, is necessarily well-versed. But I think the Americans did not realize in Islamabad that this is the decision of where this is going to head is up to Iran. That's very clear, despite the fact that Iran took some very heavy hits in terms of manufacturing, in terms of some of its military assets. But by all estimates, it still has significant stockpiles of ballistic missiles and drones, and it still can inflict tremendous damage. It has, of course, set up a toll booth system, $2 million, which is not dollars. They have to be paid in the Chinese currency, which again is, of course, a part of chipping away of the hegemony of the U.S. dollar, the tyranny of the U.S. dollar in the world financial markets. So, and even if you look closely at this so-called blockade, it's more bluff, or it's more bluster than reality. The Iranian ships have been tracked leaving Karg Island. Chinese ships have gotten through the strait. So, but again, with Trump, you have a very hard time disentangling his own fictitious vision, his non-reality based vision of the world from the real world.
What is the left to argue about in these talks? It's reported that Trump is demanding a 20-year moratorium on further enrichment of nuclear materials. We're long past the idea that Iran will be forced to give up its nuclear program. It will not, and it's no longer even being asked to by the United States. It is reported that Iran is prepared for no further enrichment for 5 years. So there's a gap of 15 years. How this is enforceable in any way, I've got no idea, especially when Iran has such powerful nuclear allies like North Korea, like Pakistan, like China and Russia. But the gone is the demand for restrictions on the missile range that Iran should be allowed to have. Gone is the demand for the abandonment of the regional relationships and alliances that Iran has. It looks like a pretty comprehensive victory to me, even if the 5-year moratorium becomes 10 years. Again, essentially unenforceable. Seems like a pretty big victory for Iran to me.
Yeah, without question. There are the issue of reparations for the destruction that Israel and the United States carried out in this unprovoked war against Iran. That's outstanding. There are the frozen assets. I think Iran has about, if I remember, $100 billion in frozen assets it wants returned. And we can't forget about Lebanon, because as part of this agreement, Iran ended attacks on U.S. bases and U.S. allies in the region, but Israel, which of course wants to sabotage the agreement, carried out, I think in 10 minutes, what did they dropped, I can't remember the number of bombs, you probably know, but I mean, that can only be without any kind of warning on Lebanon. So Iran is saying, well, we have ceased hostilities towards your allies in the region and your bases in the region. And let's be clear, they inflicted, it's censored, but all reports are they inflicted significant damage on U.S. bases. But you continue to, through Israel, attack Lebanon. I don't think that's a secondary issue for Iran. They see this as a regional, as they should, a regional confrontation. So I would say Lebanon, reparations, and frozen assets. I don't see the Iranians walking away from those demands. And I think they know they have the power, should they tighten that chokehold in the Strait of Hormuz, to see those demands met, because they have the capacity to thrust the world into a global depression. And so they've already significantly damaged the economies, especially in countries. Japan has had to go into its strategic reserves. India, I mean, that many of these, I think Japan is about 90% of its oil and natural gas comes through the Strait of Hormuz. South Korea, I mean, so they have quite effectively weaponized their control of the strait, and if those demands aren't met, they can weaponize them again.
Sure, I mean, arose by any other name, they might not call them reparations, but at $2 million, or the Chinese equivalent, with thousands of ships coming through the Straits of Hormuz, you're quickly up way beyond what Barack Obama was long traduced for sending to Iran in a 747. The amount of money that Iran shared with Oman will make from the toll booth is simply vast. It's scores of billions per annum in perpetuity. Equally, the protection money that will be easily ponied out of the Arab Gulf dictatorships for their role in this damage that was done to Iran. Again, that's significant money and relatively easily brought forth, I would have thought. Lebanon is the Gordian knot, isn't it? The Israelis seem to have, and you and I both know this from our own personal time there, an almost unhinged thirst for Lebanese blood, and what they've been unable to win from Iran, they seem determined to win from the Lebanese. What's the state of the war there now?
Well, it's the Gaza plan for southern Lebanon. They've won, well, how many people live in Lebanon? 5 million, I think. They have 1 million refugees.
Over 5 million.
Yeah. So 1 million refugees in Lebanon. Lebanon, we should be clear, is also, I think, per capita, the host to more refugees than any other country in the Middle East already. Whole villages have been obliterated in the same way in Gaza. And they have that Zionist project. I mean, you go all the way back to 1919 and the British, you had the Zionists begging for Palestine to be pushed forward into southern Lebanon because of the aquifers, the water, and the very fertile land. That's always been kind of attractive to those who embrace this ideology of greater Israel. Greater Israel just means the expansion of Israeli territory, as we have seen, of course, in Gaza. Remember, they now have seized almost 60% of Gaza. We don't want to forget about the suffering of the Palestinians there. They're moving up to the Litani River. They are almost at the gates of Damascus. And what they want to do in countries like Iran is what they did in Syria or what they did in Iraq, which is turn these places into failed states. And one of the kind of very cynical tactics the Israelis always employ is to foster civil strife or civil war, which they did in Iraq. And that every time they talk about negotiations with the Lebanese government, their goal is to force or pressure the Lebanese military, which is a very weak entity, to disarm Hezbollah. And Hezbollah was formed, as you know, in 1982 as a resistance group to counter Israeli occupation. Israel went into southern Lebanon in 82 and was there until I think it was 2000. So, but what they want is failed states around them. And that is why they are upset at Trump's cessation of the hostilities in Iran, because they're not done. Only 61% of Iran is Persian, and the rest are made up of all sorts of not just ethnic groups, Azerbaijanis and Turkmens, and but also there are various religious groups, Zoroastrians, etc., in Iran, and they would like to set these groups one against the other, as happened in Iraq, and that's the policy in Lebanon. But Trump's decision to halt the bombing campaign, which Israel was apparently not a part of, Trump's decision to open talks in Islamabad, and of course he was spooked by two things. One, the potential catastrophic damage to the global economy, but also the fact that he had been had by Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been trying to sell a war with Iran for 40 years. The Pentagon has never bought it. One, because Iran is not an existential threat to the United States, and number two, because they didn't think it would end well for the United States, and of course it hasn't. I mean, the Iranians, there was free passage in the Strait of Hormuz before this war. That's over. That's finished. And I just think, George, on another point, I think what we're seeing is essentially Iran breaking out of its cage. For 47 years it has been caged through sanctions and the U.S. funding terrorist groups like the Mujahideen al-Haq, etc. And I think that the real fundamental goal, which I think the Iranians can achieve, is that they're going to break down the barriers that have been imposed on Iran since the 1979 resolution. And I think you see that by all sorts of countries, China and Russia, not just China and Russia, but even the French are paying these, whatever you call them, fees to transit through the Strait. I think the message to the Gulf countries is very clear, because these U.S. bases, which were set up ostensibly to protect these countries, primarily from Iran, in fact proved magnets for attacks. And as interceptor missiles were depleted, Israel was prioritized, and these countries were left with very little to protect themselves.
We are looking at Iran as the fourth superpower now, aren't we? Their prowess was heavily underestimated, including by me, I must say. I knew that there would be no pushover, but I had no idea that their military abilities and their attributes were so terrific that they would fight to a standstill the empire of the United States and its auxiliary Israel. And so, along with Russia, China, and the United States, you must now speak of Iran in that company, don't you think?
Yeah, I think certainly regionally, I think you're right. And, we can't discount the alliance that Iran has with China and Russia. By all accounts, the satellite systems of those two countries were the ability to see through those satellites was provided to the Iranians, which is why the strikes were so precise. And that, of course, unnerved the Israelis and the Americans significantly. I think they learned a lot from the 12-day attack. Remember, Iran has been attacked twice in less than a year, unprovoked attacks. And I think they learned a lot from the 12 days of attacks last June. For instance, when the war began, they immediately emptied the universities and all large buildings, and that's why the number of civilian dead, well, I think there's roughly 2,700 dead from the war in Iran, with about 250 children, including the girls in that school. But the number of dead may actually be less than the 12-day war. They decentralized their command and control, which was very smart. Most of these missiles are buried deep underground, and they have railway beds underground where they can go back and forth. So, the U.S. or Israel are bombing mountain passes where these ballistic missiles are buried before being launched, but they're not doing any damage. So, and the drones, of course, as usual, proved very, very effective. So you have these relatively inexpensive drones, which Iran produces. In fact, they provided them to Russia in the Ukraine war, and they can take out. Some of those radar stations are $1 billion, and so with relatively cheap ordnance, they were able to really cripple the very sophisticated military of the United States. The U.S. has been clearly spooked by this.
Finally, Chris, is there any way back for Trump before November? Or are we looking at a political sea change, at least in the names of the parties? I know that both parties are two cheeks of the same backside, but it's pregnant with impeachment for Trump if there is that sea change, isn't there?
Yes, but I think that we have to take seriously the calls within the Trump administration and even by Trump himself to invalidate the midterms. This is a man who did not recognize his own loss to Biden. He said on the campaign trail that if he lost in 2024, it would be because of fraud. You have all sorts of people around him, again, including him, talking about a third term. I think he feels very, very cornered and threatened. And you're right that it would be a kind of almost mortal political threat for him if the Republicans lose the midterms. I don't think we can discount heavy interference in there already are a series of mechanisms, canceling mail-in ballots and severely restricting voter access. And remember that he has seated in electoral commissions around the country, he has seated those commissions with people who support his contention that the end of his presidential term and his running for his second presidential term was that the Democratic victory was fraud. And that's what worries me. So I given the dictatorial proclivities of Trump and the people who support him, I think if they feel deeply threatened by the midterms, those midterms could never happen, or the results would not be honored. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
That would be civil war, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know if it'd be a civil war. We would just become in this long process, which began before Trump, we would just become another sleazy, dictatorial, imperial regime.
Wow. Chris Hedges, as always, a tour de force. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right after that. Stay tuned. I wonder if there's more to it, Anthony. She says not, but might she be preparing for a presidential run?
You very well may, but Americans don't like a quitter. So even if she was starting to speak some truth, we're not going to take that very well.
Fair point. Very, very fair point. But Donald Trump's political position looks to me now extremely isolated. He has destroyed a very considerable part of his most militant base. He hasn't just lost Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's lost Tucker Carlson, he's almost entirely lost Alex Jones, he has substantially lost the support of Steve Bannon, and many, many others are beginning to question his judgment, and some even to question his continuing fitness for office. So he's in a very weak position. But if he wanted to, he could take the bull by the horns on this Ukraine question. He could say, stop sabotaging me. Don't think by leaking things you're going to divert me. I'm serious. I'm ending this war, and I'm certainly going to end America's involvement in this war.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Over 50,000 votes now. Will Trump's Hormuz blockade force Iran to surrender? Yes or no? You can vote on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. And don't forget to subscribe, or on patreon.com/George Galloway. First call up is from Germany, where Malik wants to talk about Trump. Malik, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. Thank you for taking my call. I would like to sum up the situation about USA and Trump in following way. USA empire has 3 barking dogs, Germany, UK, and France, and 1 biting dog, Israel. It also has some smaller dogs like Pakistan Army, which runs the country. But USA is failing empire. It can only do.
Don't forget the Chihuahuas. Malik,
Chihuahua.
don't forget the Chihuahuas in the so-called Baltic states.
Well, these are, which I said, these are smaller dogs which are helpful to USA empire. But USA is failing empire. It can only do what a scorpion does, and that is to bite. USA deep state gambled with Trump by putting him in power, and they failed. In fact, we should thank Mr. Trump for doing what Gorbachev did to Soviet Republic, and he has exposed USA and the West. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Malik. Words of wisdom there from Germany, a pretty difficult place to oppose the government of the day, although not any more difficult than my own country of Britain. Hence my exile. Hence the extraordinary decision that I just read about today. I'm trying to get him on the show on Sunday, of a former British police officer, 11 years in the British police, fell in love with a Russian woman, moved to St. Petersburg, works for Zenit St. Petersburg, the top football club in the Russian Federation, who's just had his nationality taken away from him. This is a natural-born Englishman I'm talking about. This is a man whose ancestors were with King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. He moves to Russia. He's a former British police officer, and he's had his nationality taken from him by a Home Secretary called Shabana Mahmood. Go figure. A Pakistani woman takes British citizenship from a natural-born Englishman and long-serving police officer. That's the kind of madness that we now have in Britain. And of course, as thanks to the Grey Zone and to the courage of the Member of Parliament, Zara Sultana, in her speech under parliamentary privilege this week, we now know something unimaginable has happened in Britain. I mean, as a lawmaker across 5 decades, it's unimaginable what I'm about to tell you. There are 6 people on trial right now in connection to the Palestine Action case, whom the jury has not been told and the British press forbidden to report, are going to be sentenced for terrorism if found guilty, even though the charge that they're facing is not terrorism, but criminal damage. But agreement has been reached that they will be sentenced as if they had been convicted for terrorism when they're not charged with terrorism. And the jury doesn't know. What if they give a guilty verdict expecting a 6-month sentence for criminal damage, and they find the guilty, found guilty, getting 10 or 15 years in prison for terrorism? And the entire British press was legally forbidden to report this monstrosity of a legal abortion. And it was only the courage of Max Blumenthal breaking the story from outside Britain in the United States that even I know this, let alone anybody else knows it. And it was only because of the courage of Zara Sultana MP, who, having spoken the story in parliamentary proceedings, allowed this story now to be reported as reportage from Parliament. And that's the only reason why any British newspaper or broadcaster is able now to tell the British public how that their entire way of life is being completely distorted, degraded, degenerated by this fellow Keir Starmer. I don't know if I want him to be turned out at the beginning of May, because I'm waiting so anxiously for the trial at the end of May. You know, the trial of the people accused of arsoning him, the Ukrainian models, male models, rent boys. I want to know what they had against our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. So in a way, I hope he survives, at least until the outcome of the trial is known. Let me read some comments. If you're watching on YouTube, just scan that QR code and leave comments. I'll try and read them. Tam McIntosh says, Jesus was weak on crime, but Trump let a drug baron from Honduras walk free. Let's not get confused, Tam. It was the Pope, he said, was weak on crime. Although, as somebody posing as Montesanti from the Sopranos pointed out, the Pope's weak on crime. This is our moment, T, was one of the best memes I saw this week. Sammy Git 9486 says President of Iran is defending the Pope while the President of the United States is threatening the Pope and comparing himself to Jesus. That is the tweet of the night. Lee Argent says I could spend 2 weeks smoking crack and still not be as batshit crazy as Donald Trump. And the Talk Watcher says, I think the war is more about denying China the petrochemical resources of the region. She has been promoting the petrol-yan for 5 years now. But it's not denying China anything. First of all, Chinese tankers are sailing seamlessly through the Straits of Hormuz. China buys 90% of Iran's production, but Iran's production is only 10% of China's consumption. And Russia is well able to supply any shortfall. This is all just hot air coming from Trump. Like his total lie today that China has agreed not to supply weapons to Iran, forcing the Chinese to say, we haven't even talked about that with you, and we would never talk about that to you. That's a matter between China and Iran. Who do you think we are? You're satraps? The Talk Watcher. No, that's the one I've just done. The Adivar, So 8175, says they've all but stopped talking about the Epstein files too. Well, we will never stop talking about the Epstein files, I promise you. There's a legend on the line. Let's get her in before the break. It's the one and only May in Oklahoma. Welcome, May.
Hey, my dear hero, George. I hope you're doing well today, and I appreciate you taking my call. I had several things I wanted to mention to you, and I'll try to be brief. First of all, I want to thank you for letting me ask a question of Dr. Morandi. Being able to talk to two of my heroes on the same day was just amazing. I'm still over the moon about it. Second, I want to make note, with all the tragedies going on in this world right now, today is tax day in the United States. For those of us who are not happy about our government's behavior and philosophies right now, sounds like UK is even worse for the moment. Today is a tragic day. So I just wanted to mention that. I had mentioned to you in the past that I had family in southern Lebanon. My ex-husband is from there. And I just heard that they had been forced to go to North Lebanon, all of them. And one or two family members had gone back to the south. One found that her house was damaged, but there was a guy who'd been killed on his motorcycle right in her front lawn. And so I'm so very, very thankful that the family is all okay right now. But, oh, my God, it's awful. And I just hate that our government is complicit. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about...
your government is organizing it with Netanyahu. Your diplomacy is designed to disarm the people who are resisting Israeli invasion and reward the people who are collaborating with the Israeli invasion. It's unprecedented, the way in which both the President and Prime Minister of Lebanon are openly cavorting with Israeli criminals at the same time as their own capital city is being reduced to rubble. As you just pointed out, the people of the south of Lebanon are 1 million people. That is 20% of the entire population of Lebanon. Imagine 20% of the entire population of the United States having to abandon the southern part of the United States and move north. Imagine the dislocation that would represent. Imagine some of them going back to their own homes, whether to collect stuff that they need that they've left, or to try and move back into their homes, and discovering dead bodies on their lawn. This is an atrocity of atrocities. This is Gaza 2.0. And the world is silent about it. Perhaps that's the unkindest cut of all. Now, a big thanks, May. Big thanks to some of tonight's Moats supporters who've been backing the program through the website moats.tv. And that is the 5 stars that I'm going to refer to are all big donors and regular donors, keeping the Moats alive. Motaz Salah, Raymond Blessing, Aidan Connolly, Isabella McCardle, and Rash Hussein. A big thanks to all 5 of you and to everyone who's going to go to moats.tv and leave a donation before the end of this night. It's very easy. Just go to moats.tv and click Donate Now. You can give in any currency, you can make it recurring, or you can make it a one-off. Now, we've got a very, very high-profile guest coming up. It is Dan Bilzerian, who is standing for a congressional seat in Florida, currently occupied by maybe the most loathsome man ever to appear on the floor of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And believe me, that is saying something. The whole world's rooting for Dan Bilzerian, and he's here on Moats right after this short break. Stay tuned. The legend Donna in Panama. Oh, Donna, we miss you.
Well, I miss you all too, and I wonder, is there anything that we might do that might help?
It's a beautiful thought, Donna, and characteristic of you to think of it. But my estimation is that I will be in what is self-imposed exile until after Starmer is gone. This was a political operation. The police were misused, as is now happening everywhere. My deputy leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, distinguished parliamentarian Chris Williamson, has been hunted out of his studio for his television program, Palestine Declassified. It's clear that a state and police operation is in preparation against him and that show. They want to close it down. And I cannot risk this show being closed down. He's risking it because he's broadcasting from England, from a studio in England. I am not. And ancient hatred of Russia is what lies beneath Starmer's hatred of the mother of all talk shows. So until the political situation changes, we will continue to live in exile. It's no hardship, to be honest. Where we are living is far, I'm sorry to say, far more prosperous than our own country is, and the weather is a lot better too. So I'm not asking for anyone's sympathy, but I'm not going to place myself in an arrestable situation again. I think you know, Donna, the toll it took on my health to be confronted by armed police officers and be told I was being held under the Terrorism Act. Me, under the Terrorism Act.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Dan, he's the man that's got everything. Super successful entrepreneur with a following of millions and millions of people across social media, and a US veteran. You might well ask, why would he want to go to Washington, D.C. and be a congressman? Well, I think the answer, we'll get it from him right now, I think the answer is he wants to do the whole world a service by getting rid of the most loathsome reptile ever to slither across the floor of the Capitol, a man by the name of Randy Fine. Dan, I've got to ask you, what's in it for you? There you are. You are all the things I've just described you as well as being a magnificent figure of a man compared to Randy Fine. It's going to be quite a mismatch. Not since Marciano fought Don Coquel has there been a mismatch like this. What's in it for you? Why are you doing it?
It's a hell of a build-up. I appreciate that. There's not much in it for me. To me, this is a bit of a selfless act. You know, it's just something that I feel needs to be done, and it doesn't seem like anybody's stepping up to do it. And I feel like there's a lot of frustration in America right now, and there's not many people taking action. There's a ton of people talking about it now, finally. It was kind of a taboo subject, but nobody's actually doing anything. So that's why I feel obligated to do it.
Have you met him yet? Has he dared to face you in public yet?
No, I have not met him at all. I've not. I've just seen his tweets and his, repulsive rhetoric. That's about it.
Just give us a flavor of that repulsive rhetoric. I know it well, but some in the audience might not. What's your beef with him?
Well, I mean, he's just dehumanized the Palestinians. He, dehumanizes Muslims. I mean, I think that's something that we've seen in America a lot from the Jewish community, is just a total dehumanization of the Muslim population. You see Bill Maher talk about Islam as the motherlode of bad ideas. And then the moment you criticize Judaism in any way, or a Jew or Israel, you're anti-Semitic. They label you all these things, but they're allowed to just paint a quarter of the globe with one brush. And I don't like the hypocrisy. And I don't view Muslims as the problem. They're a quarter of the globe. They constantly tell us that Sharia law is coming to America and the Islamification of America is, this big threat. And I just don't see it. I mean, obviously in the UK, there's some issues, but I think that comes from bringing in military-age men from war-torn countries that have no allegiance to the land and that they're, impoverished. I don't think that that's a religious issue. I mean, you've got Ethiopians causing, plenty of problems, just like Somalians. One is a Christian nation, one is a Muslim nation. I don't think this is a religious issue at all. I think it's an immigration issue and a poverty issue. So,
well, we'll come to those points in a minute, but it would be fair to say that if any religious group, if any group who call themselves an ethnicity, it's not something I myself accept, has taken over America, it sure ain't Muslims. It's the American Israel Public Affairs Committee that has bought 93 out of 100 U.S. senators. It's the pro-Israel lobby, not just, of course, Jews, but evangelical Christians in their millions that have a total stranglehold on American politics. In fact, the least powerful group in America are American Muslims.
Yes, correct. I mean, they're underrepresented. You see there's, 3 or 4 Muslims in Congress and there's 36 Jews. And the problem is not that they're Jews. The problem is that anybody that's Jewish can today or tomorrow immediately get citizenship in Israel and flee there if they molest children or do whatever they want to do. And you clearly see that that's shaping our foreign policy. It's not the Muslims that are in office. We have this unhealthy allegiance to Israel, and we are doing, their work at our detriment. And so there's clearly a problem, and it's a problem that the moment you discuss it, as you probably well know, I mean, being one of the OGs of this topic, you get ostracized, you get, canceled, debanked, deplatformed, whatever. And So it's something that needed to be addressed, and it was something that I felt like a lot of people believed, but nobody wanted to talk about it. So that's why I felt obligated to come forward and, say something.
Florida's going to be a tough wicket, though, isn't it? Woody Allen called it Jewish heaven. It's a tough place to fight your particular battle.
Yes, no, it is. I mean, and it's also District 6 is the people that vote for the primary are 70% 55 and older. So it's going to be a tough demographic. It's a tough race, but I feel like he needs to be unseated. And I feel like I'm probably one of the most likely people to be able to do it. I mean, nobody else is stepping up. Obviously, if Thomas Massey lived there and he wanted to go do it, I'd be cheering him on. I mean, the last thing I want to do is run for Congress or be in government, but somebody, needs to stop this guy. I mean, he's just, to me, I feel like he's a terrorist. I think he should be hanged for treason.
Well, either that or dropped out of one of these B-2 bombers. He would make quite a mess when he landed. The situation in Washington is going from bad to worse, isn't it? The Democrats and the Republicans are two cheeks of the same ass. The quality of leadership on offer in both parties is so bad that probably none of the above would be the winning party in a fair election in the United States. How long are they going to continue this farce of two cheeks of the same ass pretending to fight together, but they clap in the same direction?
Oh, that's a beautiful description. I've heard the two heads of the same bird, but I much prefer your analogy. I couldn't agree more. I think you see it. I mean, it's like they can't agree on anything except for support of Israel. They can't agree on anything except for the things that the right and the left population agree on. They just agree in the opposite direction, right? Like everybody in America does not want to fund Israel. Everybody in America does not want to be in this Iran war. Everybody in America did not want to fund Ukraine, right? But somehow the government officials all agree on the other side. So I think you clearly have corruption. I don't think that you have a government that is working in the best interest of the people or representing the people, and that's what needs to really change.
And Trump is now falling out with everyone. There's almost no one left to fall out with. He's fallen out with Meloni today, sharp exchanges across the ocean with the Italian Prime Minister. He's fallen out with the Pope. We've got J.D. Vance, a convert of only 6 years, standing, lecturing the Pope on theological matters. The white working class, bedrock of Donald Trump's MAGA base, has not just fallen out of love with him, but is now positively against him by a considerable distance. The progress that he made amongst black voters, Latino voters, Asian voters has gone into reverse. It's hard to see who, other than the Israel zealots, Jewish and Christian, who is still supporting Donald Trump.
I totally agree, and I think it's just been a complete farce. He sold out the country. He's lied to us so many times. And then he's attacked everybody. I mean, who hasn't he attacked? To your point, I mean, he's attacked the Pope. He's, posted himself as Jesus Christ. He's attacked all of his initial supporters, Candace Owens, Tucker, Alex, all these people. So, yeah, I feel like his base is disintegrating. It's impossible to defend him. Not that I was a defender of him. In fact, before 2024, I, told people not to vote for him. Not that I was a big fan of Kamala Harris, but I just felt like he was an absolute disaster, and I felt like his base was kind of cult-like, and they would blindly follow him a lot further than they would Kamala. Not saying that we should have elected her. I think she was a dumpster fire as well. But that's kind of the problem, right, is you just never have a good option, right? We had Biden, Trump, Kamala Harris, you know what I mean? It's just like it's bad to worse every time. And that's really the problem in our country is I feel like nobody gets to that position unless they have some serious control and blackmail over that politician. And you see it because they all do the same thing. To your point, it doesn't matter if they're left. It doesn't matter if they're right. It's just blind support of Israel to the detriment of our country, and it needs to stop.
Well, for the first time, we've got a majority of people in America who tell pollsters that they agree with that. I personally never thought that day would come, but it has come now. Unfortunately, a lot of people had to leave their guts on the ground to achieve it. But now a majority of Americans disapprove of the United States' relationship with Israel. And amongst young Jewish people, a majority disapprove of the United States' relationship with Israel. How are you going to avoid this? You can't avoid it. We're all accused of being anti-Semites. Even the Palestinians who are actually Semites, unlike the Ashkenazi Jews who have no connection to the blood of Abraham whatsoever, who converted to Judaism only a few centuries ago. We're all accused of anti-Semitism. But some of us are easier to attack than others. You're one of those. You have strongly made your point, the kind of points you've been making here this evening. They're going to mine everything that you have ever said. How are you going to handle that?
Well, I'm not going to apologize for any of it. I stand by everything that I've said. So there will be no doubling back. In fact, there will just be only doubling down. To me, the more I look into this, it's just worse and worse. And I don't look at this as a Zionist problem. I mean, I think Zionists are the problem, but I think it's more of a Jewish supremacy issue. I think it's the fact that their religion believes that they are chosen by God and that they are better than other people, and that allows them to treat the Palestinians like dogs, and it allows them to just, treat them not as humans. And it says that in the Talmud. It says that, people that aren't Jewish are, basically cattle. And you see that's the way they're operating. And so I have a huge issue with that. I think everybody's equal. And I think as long as we want to, coexist as humans on this earth, I think we have to have a message of equality, and supremacy in any sense is a huge issue. We were sold a bill of goods. We were told that white supremacy is the greatest threat to America today, and that's just absolutely not true. It's Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America today, and the world, in fact. And you see that in Israel. And so for me, like you, I reject the whole term anti-Semite because I believe the Palestinians are Semites. Semites are Arabs. That was, just one more thing that they've stolen, just like they stole the land. And so I just don't even recognize the term. So if they want to say that I'm anti-Jewish, I would say that I'm not against all Jews. I obviously don't think that you can paint an entire group with one brush. However, I still think that you can say not all Jews are bad, but that Jews are causing a disproportionate amount of problems, and that's my position, is that Jewish supremacy is the threat, Jewish supremacy is the problem, and I don't agree with supremacy in any form. So I'm adamantly against that.
And how much has the Epstein affair cost the supremacists? I mean, it seems to me that after all we know, and the figures the people that we've seen, the pictures, the videos, the names, it's pretty hard to claim you're better than other people when such a disproportionate number of you have been doing things that the normal right-thinking people would never dream of doing. It seems to me that together with Israel's conduct in Gaza, and now in Iran and in Lebanon for all of my adult life, the conduct of the elite in the United States has really counted badly against American support for Israel, contributed mightily to the massive hemorrhage of support that there has been. Do you think that they've learned any lessons from that?
It just seems like they're more and more brazen. I mean, the fact that there's been zero arrests from the Epstein files, the fact that they haven't released all the files despite the, Congress ordering them to, and them being legally obligated to, I think that tells you a lot. And that's, I think, a big source of the frustration is that we're not even getting performative arrests. We're getting nothing. And Americans are pissed. We don't want to see children being raped. We don't want to see children being killed. I mean, that was something that 10 years ago we all could agree on. And now I just feel like we live in this crazy world where, men are women and women are men. And, it's okay for a man to beat up a woman in a boxing match now. And it's okay for drag queens to read to 9-year-olds in schools. And, rape is not being punished. And pedophilia is, somehow trying to be normalized. Like, I just feel like our world is flipped upside down. And I look at where this is coming from, and it's coming from the media, and I don't like it. And you can't say anything about it. Well, I mean, you can, but they start deplatforming you. They start demonetizing you. They accuse you of anti-Semitism. And I'm just tired of all that shit. Like, I want it to end. I want there to be Epstein arrests. I want full transparency. I want the government to be operating in the best interest of the citizens and not taking advantage of the citizens. And right now, I feel like all the government employees are getting in there with the idea of what can I get from this and how can I help my donors and how can I get reelected, not what can I do for the country. And that's really the crux of the issue. And so, yeah, I want Epstein arrests. I want people fucking hung from the gallows. I mean, I'm tired of it.
Now, how your social media following is simply enormous. Millions, it's in the millions. Are they getting behind your election campaign? Are you conscious of that?
So I've got a little under 60 million followers across platforms. I haven't posted on my largest platforms yet. I've really been kind of focusing on Twitter. I posted something on my Facebook. But to me, yeah, I think we're going to win the social media battle. I don't even think it's close. I mean, I did a TMZ interview, and it was basically a hit piece. They were trying to accuse me of anti-Semitism the whole time and coming after me. And I looked at their comments on all 5 platforms, being X, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all that. And it was like 95 to 97% in my favor. And I think that's pretty telling because that's traditionally, I would think, a more liberal, female audience, not usually my base. And it seems like they all understand the problem. People care about this. People are tired of this, Palestinian genocide. And it's something that people are willing to protest about. People are willing to get out of bed and, and talk about on social media. So hopefully it will piss people off enough where they can, register Republican in my district and send in a ballot and vote for my primary, because that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take young voters to come out and actually start having their voice heard. And I think this is an issue that's going to piss them off enough to where they might actually do it.
Well, whether people agree with your overall politics or not, I think I can say that the vast majority of right-thinking people in the world will be hoping that you give a gigantic boot up the gigantic arse of Mr. Randy Fine. So the very best of luck. Dan Bilzerian, thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Much obliged to you. Well,
thank you, brother.
That was something. What do you think? Take a moment to contemplate and call me. It's your calls right up to Gayatri in just a moment. Stay tuned. It was set up in 1949. People, an amazing number of people imagine that it was set up in opposition to the former Warsaw Pact formed by the Soviet Union and the socialist countries. But in fact, NATO predated by some years the creation of the Warsaw Pact, which was in fact an answer to the West creating NATO. Now, I've spent, well, literally my whole life, since I was 13 years old, I've been demanding Britain out of NATO, and now NATO is disintegrating in front of our eyes. I don't know when they agreed the permanent membership and the veto system, but the UN is clearly now unfit for purpose. and I have long believed and proselytized for the BRICS and the SCO and the New World Order to establish their own United Nations, because it seems to me that the current UN in New York is, well, completely useless, has hegemony over it, can even decide which member states are to be allowed a visa to come and speak at the United Nations. It's preposterous. I remember I was with Chavez in New York when the US refused to give visas to his bodyguards. But such was Chavez's charisma that he took to the streets of New York without any bodyguards and was hailed everywhere he turned. Such was the magnificence of Hugo Chavez. He walked around the streets of New York to a hero's welcome without bodyguards because the US refused to allow his bodyguards a visa.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, the reactions to Dan are flooding in from all over the world, but let's go to Stephanie in Connecticut, USA, for the first of those. What would you like to say, Steph?
Hi, George. Can you hear me okay?
Very clear, thank you.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I am Jewish, and I just wanted to say a few things. I wanted first, and I'm anti-Zionist, and I want to say a few things about, just to sort of set the record straight about Judaism, as first of all, as a religion, because I think Zionism has been very successful in presenting a very different interpretation of Judaism than I ever learned growing up. One of the things, and I don't subscribe to anything about any group being chosen, but I do want to say that when I was a kid, which was a very long time ago, more than half a century ago, a rabbi came into our class of Hebrew school one day, and he was very emphatic. He said that he wanted us to understand that the term chosen people means simply chosen to receive the commandments at Mount Sinai and to follow and obey them. And there are actually about 613, I think, commandments. So he said that that's all that it meant. It did not mean superior to anyone, better than anyone, more beloved by God than anyone. It didn't mean any of that. And he was very emphatic about that. I don't know what it says in the Talmud because I'm not a student of the Talmud, but that is what I always learned, even though, as I say, I don't even subscribe to chosen anybody for anything. And I also want to say that I think that while Zionism is definitely playing a very serious role in our country and in our world today, it seems to me that it's part of a much bigger picture of American exceptionalism and American hegemony and empire in the world. And Brian Berletic has pointed out on his podcast many times the Brookings Institute study, Which Path to Persia, which is about destabilizing Iran, and even has a chapter that says "Let Bibi do it," meaning using Israel for that purpose. And Richard Medhurst recently did a 34-minute documentary, which I think everyone should watch, and he shows how this is all about a much bigger issue around the United States gaining monopoly of oil and gas, the oil and gas market around the world, and ultimately conquering China. So I just think it's really important to see a bigger picture. And I'm not saying that Zionism is not a major problem, because it is, and I'm part of organizations that are trying to fight that. But I do think that a larger picture has to be seen, because if it isn't, then we're never going to solve the problem.
Well, that's a very beautiful call and a very powerful one, and one with which I agree fundamentally. But there are developing nuances that are problematic for you and for me. I have resisted all of my life the notion that Israel dictates to the United States, not the other way around. For example, the problem is the emerging evidence that Benjamin Netanyahu provides on a daily basis, that he does, in fact, dictate to the United States. That doesn't mean the United States itself, if not for Israeli influence, would be a benign force in the world. I'm old enough to know the very opposite is true. But when the Prime Minister for the last 20 years and more of Israel, on camera, tells you that they control the political process in the United States and can get anything they want from the United States, and when kinetically that turns out to have been an accurate prediction, it's a problem for you and me, Stephanie. Please let me hear your response.
Yeah, I do think that I'm certainly, my feeling is that the two are intertwined, and it may be because of the ultimate goal of the U.S., which has been for at least all my lifetime, if not before, the ultimate goal of, I shouldn't say of the U.S., but of certain forces in the U.S. to gain control of markets all over the world, that it's working for them perfectly to have somebody like Netanyahu and a place like Israel to do a lot of their dirty work for them. I'm not excusing any of that. I think, they absolutely play a big role. But if they weren't, if it turned out that all of a sudden the U.S. decided, you know what, we don't need Israel anymore, or something else is going to work for us much better, they would drop them like a hot potato. I just don't think that they really have any loyalty. I mean, maybe Trump does personally, and maybe some people who receive money from the lobby do personally, but I don't think that the ruling class, the real ruling class of the United States, have a loyalty to anybody or anything except cornering markets and controlling everything.
Of course that's true, and it's classically the political position that someone like me would take. And I happen to believe that the reason there are a huge number, gigantically disproportionate number, of Jewish people in the Epstein affair is because of the elite status of those individuals, not because of their religion. And it's almost certain that very few of them are remotely religious. But it doesn't help that these accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein are a big sea, a big ocean of Jewish surnames. Not because they're Jews, but because they're a part of the elite, which in the United States and elsewhere is an increasingly degenerate elite. You should be a guest on this show, not a caller, because then we might have more time to debate this. I take the view that the United States and Israel are the same thing, that the CIA and the Mossad are the same thing, that effectively Israel is the 51st state of the United States. So I don't think there's any possibility of them dropping Israel like a hot potato. You'd have to change the representatives in toto in Washington, D.C. for that to happen, because you say those who are in receipt of the money from the lobby. The problem is that's almost every single last one of them. I gave the figures earlier. 93 of 100 senators in the United States is on the payroll of the Israel lobby. And the vast majority of Congress people are in the pay of the Israel lobby. And the video exists of their corruption, and not least because of Epstein. So unless you completely root and branch, uproot the corrupt political class in Washington, I don't think that the joint crimes of the United States and Israel are going to end anytime soon. A pleasure talking to you, Stephanie. Thank you for the call. I need to thank again those whose support maintains the independence of this program. So keep it going as you have been week after week. A big thanks then this evening to Michael Weinberg, Ajmer Singh Chahal, James Brogan, Lisa Martino, and Jerzy Poplawski. What a wonderful collection of donors you all are. Please go to moats.tv before this night is out and leave your contribution for the mother of all talk shows. Let's go to Canada, where Mohammed wants to talk about Donald Trump. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. How are you doing?
By the grace of God, good. What would you like to say?
I just want to say Donald Trump is a useful idiot. Like, he's being used. People think that he's using people. Like, naturally, the guy's a narcissist. He's a very bad person. I don't want to go there because Dan said most of the things that I wanted to talk about. All I wanted to say is for like people to open their eyes and see exactly what's going on, especially the Arabs, like the Qataris, the Bahrainis, the Saudis, and Emiratis. Because like after they finish with Iran, the next countries they're going to go to are those countries. They're just going to capture them because they have no armies, they have no military, they have no population, and take all their riches. Just like Donald Trump said the other day, like we're just going to take the oil and make a lot of money. And sometimes people don't pay attention to those little things they say. The reason why he say those things because like he doesn't know how to keep secrets. Like these things are, they tell him these things to keep them in secret. So everybody needs to wake up. Like what really scared me the most was last Monday when he made his post and saying he's God. And then after he got caught in his lie, he said that, no, I just meant that I was a doctor, healing people. Like, he thinks that everybody is so stupid, you know? Like, I know.
Yeah.
We really
He's
have
a
to
stable genius,
wake up.
no doubt. Mohammed, you're absolutely correct. The problem is he's got his finger on the button, and he's got the command of a gigantic military machine, and no one can stop him tweeting, never mind stop him sending young Americans into war after war after war, despite having been elected as a peace candidate, and despite being so bitterly disappointed that he is not the Nobel Peace Prize winner. He is blundering around like not a bull in a china shop, but like a gorilla with an automatic weapon and a bandolier of ammunition when he runs out. This is Donald Trump. And one benefit is, and I'm sure you can see this in Canada, we can see it in the rest of the world. It might be harder for the American people who have to suffer him most directly to see it. But Trump exposes the American empire better than anybody else could possibly do. If Kamala Harris had been the president, she'd have been wrapping these missiles in LGBTQ rainbow colors. She'd have been saying we're invading Iran to free the women, that they throw gays off roofs, which is confusing Iran for one or two other places like Afghanistan and so on. The whole camouflage of the American imperial project has been stripped away by the ugliness and brutishness of Donald Trump, which is one small mercy in this very terrible world that he's donating to us. My good friend Hussein Shafai sends £50. Thanks, Hoz. The world needs Dan to win this election to set America on the right path away from the plague of supremacy. And Bruce Lee Muslim says there are 3 million files, 180,000 photos, 2,000 videos of evidence on powerful men who serially abused children. Why have there been 0 arrests? Because Donald Trump is completely compromised by the Epstein affair, and compromised in a way that I think most people haven't yet grasped the seriousness of. Ant from Ohio sends $5. Thank you, Ant. Says, now that Trump has portrayed himself as Jesus, does that mean he will be crucified? If so, can we get on with it? And Richard says, what a great show tonight. Trying to call in, but I guess the phones are ringing off the hook. As always, health and strength to all of you. Richard from County Durham in England. Thank you, Richard. Michael Kennedy, TR1XC, says, I'm looking forward to a Lego Starmer and his male models. Well, let's go to Italy. Who wouldn't? Where Jacopo wants to talk about the end game for the US and Israel. I hope you're right, Jacopo. Tell me why.
Hi, George. Thanks a lot for taking my call. I'm a huge admirer of yours and your work. Thanks a lot. First of all, let me just say that I totally agree with the guest you just had. Supremacy, I believe, is the poison. Yeah, Dan, exactly. Of course, Dan Bilzerian is the poison of the world right now. My question to you is if you could be to the point as usual and very revealing in your insights. Supposing there is anyone with a plan close to the steering wheel in Washington, since the hand on the steering wheel is clearly has no rationality. I mean, Donald J. Trump. If there is a hand that still is steering the wheel with some rationality, what could be the end game for the U.S. here? I mean, do they really still believe they can divide and quarter up Iran, as somebody has said, like they did with Syria? It doesn't look feasible, if it ever was feasible in the beginning right now. So what are they doing? Is there really an influence, maybe an Israeli influence, that is keeping the steering wheel pointed to a wall where the U.S. are going to crash in Hormuz and Iran? And if there is a
well, it's a very good question, a very well expressed one. I'd be lying if I say I knew for certain, but it seems to me that the failure to defeat Iran marks a big turning point in world affairs. The victory of Iran, which will become clear when the smoke has cleared and Iran's strength and power and influence grows, together with its key allies, Russia and China, this marks a big turning point. I mean, it hardly needs saying that if you cannot defeat Iran, by definition, you cannot defeat China. You definitely cannot defeat China and Russia together. So I think we have very clearly and obviously now reached the zenith of American power. I think we reached it actually in the Iraq War 20 years ago, but it's now visible like an iceberg which is hoving more and more into view. That which was only a tip before is now visible in far greater mass. That the United States, whilst not a paper tiger by any means, still has teeth, they're still sharp, but it is a failing tiger, and there are new tigers in the jungle that are much, much more powerful than they are. And so, if you have an alliance, for that is what it is, between Iran, Russia, China, Iran's religio-political hinterland in that crescent across the Middle East, a Finlandized Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar. If you have the vaulting success of the Chinese economy, of the Russian economy, I mean Russian, you talk about sanctions. I have never seen more and more beautiful motor cars anywhere in my life than I see in Moscow. My son and I started to count the Maybachs, but we had to give up because every third car in Moscow is a Maybach. Now we're counting the two-tone ones because that's slightly easier to do. the Russian economy, the Russian currency, and even more so the Chinese economy and the Chinese currency are so vaulting ahead of what we in your European country and in mine and in the United States are remotely able to achieve. The distance between us is going to get greater and greater. And if you don't have an economy, as the British are quickly finding out, if you don't have a steel industry, if you don't have a shipbuilding industry, if you don't have, because of your own stupidity in part, you have closed down your own sources of energy, you're not a war-fighting nation. You have nuclear weapons, yes, in the case of the United Kingdom, but what good are they? As soon as you fire them, the United Kingdom ceases to exist as Russian and Chinese rockets turn our green and pleasant land into cinders and ash. So yeah, you've still got, with a nuclear weapon, the ability to kill millions of other people, but only at the cost of the entire destruction of the entire nations of the United Kingdom. So we're well past, they used to talk about peak oil, remember? We are well past peak United States military, political, and economic power. The tectonic plates have shifted and the sun has risen in the east. Thank you very much. From Italy, Jacopo. Now, have you downloaded our podcast? I'm amazed the number of people I meet that don't actually download the podcast. You don't even have to listen to it. Just download it so that if you miss a show, you can go back to the essence of it. Go to Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and listen to this quintessential version of the show. Tonight we're in the top 10 for politics in the Philippines, Argentina, Greece, and Nigeria. And we rank in the top 30 for politics in Australia, Peru, Ghana, South Africa, and Qatar. Scan the QR code now and download it. Let's go to Miami, where they'll be voting either for Randy Fine or Dan Bilzerian. Let's see what Joan in Miami thought of the interview with Dan. Joan, welcome.
Hi, George. How are you? I hope you've slept.
By the grace of God, good. Yeah, I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah? I have a couple friend with 2 children that moved to Shanghai in 2018. So I hope it's treating you well. I appreciated
fabulous.
Yes. I appreciated the commentary that Dan gave for the most part. Minus one statement. He said that the problem isn't really Zionism, it's Jewish supremacy. This is not true. All right. So I myself am German Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
On my mother's side.
John, let me stop you. John, let me stop you for a second. I promise I'll let you back in. He said Zionism is a problem, but the bigger problem is Jewish supremacy. But Jewish supremacy is Zionism. Zionism is Jewish supremacy. This is a false dichotomy. The Zionists believe that they are entitled to the land of Palestine and the support of the rest of us because of Jewish supremacy. Go ahead.
So I suggest you look up the works of Dr. Manuel Joe Ramos, who is a professor at the University of Lisbon in Spain in the Department of Anthropology. He does a brilliant documentary about how the roots of Zionism actually came from Christianity during the Crusades. I highly recommend you watch that. It's called The Crusades Never Ended, Zionism's Medieval Christian Roots Exposed. When they didn't succeed with weaponizing Christianity, they then moved on to Judaism. Now, the point that I want to make is myself being German Ashkenazi on my mom's side, and Irish Roman Catholic on my father's side. I practice traditional Jewish Christianity. I attend a synagogue in South Beach, Miami, and my rabbi, his wife, and our community are not Zionists. Zionism is an ideology, not a religion. There is a distinction. Yes, of course, it's been weaponized, but also to the point that there are more Christian Zionists, as you call them, evangelicals, here in the U.S. than there are Zionist Jews. And for that matter, if you look at all the riots that have been happening across the U.S. against the Palestinian genocide, a lot of them are Orthodox Jews who do not support Zionism, just like, you know, any other form of colonialism or imperialism.
Correct.
Number one. And then number two, you will see in the social media, like through Instagram and X, Twitter, you have now all these Israeli Jews that are protesting the war with Iran that also don't want this. They have been protesting against Netanyahu for years now, for all the various reasons associated with his corrupt government. So to pose this as a Jewish thing, I think is
well, it's them that pose it as a Jewish thing. It's them who pose it as a Jewish thing. They say that anyone who is opposed to them is guilty of anti-Semitism. They say that they are the state of the Jews. That's them saying it, not us. They say that God promised them a greater Israel, and that therefore they can take a part of Egypt, take all of Palestine, take a part of Syria and all of Lebanon, take a part of Saudi Arabia, take a part of Iraq. It's them that say that they were promised this as a religious group of people by God. Falsely they claim it, but that's what they claim. Of course, what you said is true, and I think it's best summed up in, I think it was a Venn diagram that I myself came up with, that many Jews are not Zionists, and you've mentioned them, Orthodox or secular Jews. Many Jews are not Zionists, and most Zionists are not Jews. This is an undeniable fact. Most Zionists are not Jews. They are evangelical Christians or Christian zealots who want to hurry on Armageddon so that we can all watch as the Jews are forced to convert to Christianity or be put to the sword and murdered in front of our eyes after Armageddon. That's what they believe. That's what they are seeking to bring about. So I say, away with all your obscurantist nonsense. Nobody has the right to oppress, murder, torture, falsely imprison any other group of people. It's genocide if it's done against Jews. It's genocide if it's done by Jews. I say, away with all your superstition. The commandments, if we believe in them, are very clear, at least the 10 commandments. I don't know about the 337 that we just learned about from Stephanie. I'll have to look that up. But the 10 commandments are clear enough. If we all obey them, there will be no oppression. There will be no murder. There will be no theft. There will be no lying. There will only be heaven on earth. And if you don't obey those commandments in the name of a religious group, you're asking for big, serious trouble. And that's what has happened here. So I'm in second place to nobody in my admiration for those brave Israelis who stand against this. But it would be entirely dishonest for either of us to pretend that these are large in number. They are not large in number. Survey after survey after survey shows that the vast majority of Jews in Israel support the genocide of the Palestinian people, support the war on Iran, support the invasion of Lebanon. It's only the greatest heroes on planet Earth today in Israel who oppose it, and they are few in number. And I cannot allow you to imply, if that was the implication, that because people are demonstrating against Netanyahu, that means they are for justice for Palestine or for an end to genocide, an end to never-ending war. They're not. They merely want a different Netanyahu, a new Netanyahu, one with a better disguise. That's, I'm sorry to say, Joan, the melancholy truth. Ali in London wants to talk about Melania. Go ahead, Ali.
Hi, George. First of all, I'm very envious of your Moscow trip in the Maybachs. Calling from Grim London.
No, I don't have one. I don't have one. But there's a lot of them here.
Yeah, so look, I mean, I think with the Melania thing, I think the whole world, shockingly, is missing out on probably one of the most important stories of the year, which I think deserves its own show. If you think about when the Melania press conference happened and how it happened and why it happened the day before the peace talks. So I mean, my kind of my opinion or my sort of like evaluation is that Trump wanted out. He was desperate to get out, and I think he's tried it a few times. But then suddenly, for no reason at all, and everyone's scratching around, sort of saying that this is her distancing herself from her husband, or he's pushing it because the war's getting bad. I mean, the simplest, Occam's razor, the simplest answer is the truth. Basically, someone wanted the talks to fail, so basically she comes out for no reason at all, and now's died, because what happened is that then, what's his name?
Netanyahu.
Vance went to, he went to Pakistan, and it failed. So literally, this was a nudge, this was a warning from the shadowy people in sort of, in the shadows, basically saying that if this goes ahead, if you sort of get peace, then something then we'll reveal this, and basically this is happening.
Well, you might be right. You might be right, Ali. We're out of time, I'm afraid, but you might be right, and you're right. It deserves a larger segment of the show. So let's do that on Sunday. We've got a legend on the line. Before we take a legend in the studio, it's Erebos in New York. Welcome, my dear friend.
Felicitations and salubrious salutations to Clan Galloway, George the Great, George the Giant, first of his name. Magnificent show / program, because for me it's not just a show, but that would imply that it's only for entertainment or frustration reasons. You do outline via the Workers' Party things that we all can do, no matter where we're located, no matter how big or small. We all can do something. All I can do for the time being is be on social media. I can't physically get involved in the kinetic stuff for being undocumented and stateless. They don't even want me to leave the United Snakes of America, which I would gladly do now that I know what I know and what's coming. Aside from that, shout out to Jai the Magnificent for taking my call. First of her name, well planted in life, and shout out to, of course, Gayatri the Gracious, first of her name, To get to it, because as Morpheus told Neo, time is always against us. I would say that, the guests, of course, were excellent. Dan Brazilian, I've seen him around quite a lot, but I never really honed in to him or paid much attention to what he's saying. However, he does illustrate something that needs to be done, something that I've been harping on ad infinitum, ad nauseum, which is the people need to be their own representatives. And even though you didn't state it because of the YouTube platform and the sensitivities of the liberalization of the social media, what you're implying is the entire government has to go, right? So there are two options. There's the peaceful way, which we tried to do with the or People's Party here in the U.S., which failed because of a lack of confidence of our erstwhile leader, Nick Brania. He didn't have confidence in himself to be the leader. So he went to these YouTube personalities. That failed because, they care about paid subscribers. They're not going to put their lives on the line. So what Dan doing is absolutely what's needed. Now, I may disagree on his points, but I've never agreed 100% with everyone, including myself, ever. You people that knew me very well, there was one point of disagreement. So that's not the point. The large things we do agree on, this is what we have to unify. And we need more third-party, anti-establishment, authentic left parties, from my perspective, to get involved. Other than that, then what we're talking about is violently tearing down the government, because that's what it's going to take for the establishment to go. So I just wanted to put that out there, put my cards on the table.
Well, you did, and let's hope it doesn't come to that, Erebos. Let's hope that, but as John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. So it's not that we want a breakdown of social peace or civil war or violence of any kind, but don't make peaceful change impossible. Because if you do, it is you who is risking the violent change that you say you fear. Sorry to cut you off, my dear Erebos, but we're already past time. And here is the woman without whom the news couldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, if you think that the U.S.-Israel war on Iran and the whole political chess play in the Strait of Hormuz is bringing the world economy to its knees, wait till you see what happens at the next maritime choke point. And that is the Strait of Malacca, situated in Southeast Asia, 900 kilometers long, along the western part of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And it connects west with East Asia, the Indian with the Pacific Ocean, and very specifically the South China Sea. I'll get back to that. Now, it accommodates 23% of global trade in general. And in terms of oil, it transports 29% of the whole world trade oil. So in terms of volume, it's the biggest. It's way bigger than the Strait of Hormuz, making it a very, very vital and crucial maritime choke point, a bottleneck, really. Now, this has been an important trade route for centuries. Going back to the South China Sea, it's become more and more important for China in the past decades as China grew, of course. And in 2003, more than 2 decades ago, the then Chinese leader Hu Jintao already discovered or realized that this was what he coined the Malacca dilemma, because it is such a bottleneck for global trade. So 62% of China's oil imports go through the straits, and 80% of China's energy goes through it. Go figure. Now, what happened this week? Something very interesting. Pete Hegseth, the war minister of America, received Indonesia's defense minister, Shamsuddin, at the Pentagon. And the meeting ended with a major defense cooperation partnership covering technology, security, shared training, and capacity building. And there is even talk of their use of Indonesia's airspace, but this is very much contested back in Indonesia. At the same time as this memorandum was being signed, here in Moscow, President Putin received the president of Indonesia, Prabowo. And the two are now known to have a very friendly relationship. And this is now the 5th time they've met since Prabowo's presidentship. The last time they met, just a few months ago, we were also here in Moscow, and this is just a coincidence, I must say. But there was a 2-hour bilateral meeting, followed by a 3-hour one-on-one between the president of Indonesia and the president of the Russian Federation. And this also resulted, this wasn't just symbolic, it was very concrete. It resulted in strengthening a relationship and strategic partnership, primarily in the sector of energy and mineral resources. So we have Indonesia along the Strait of Malacca, this biggest share of the Strait of Malacca, and in the same week, the US meeting Indonesia and Russia meeting Indonesia. So what used to be neither Washington nor Moscow became Washington and Moscow. What used to be non-bloc is now an omni-bloc. And this is so typical of the Indonesian nation and the tradition of the Asia-Africa Bandung Conference in 1955, where President Sukarno declared its non-alignment, and this stayed all these decades on. This stayed in the Indonesian memo. So they're very proud of it. They're very proud that they can do both, play both parts in this very interesting times. As President Prabowo said, 1,000 friends are too few. One opponent is too many, never mind one enemy. So the question is just, will this rhetoric, will this non-alignment idea still be valid in the 21st century where the world is now upside down?
Let's hope so. Fantastically put. That was a lesson for me, and I suspect many in the audience. The Straits of Malacca. Make a note. You may be hearing more about them. I'm already nearly 10 minutes late in saying goodnight to you. And it's not about chips. It's about the workers who are still manning the phones and still fixing the cameras, still making the lighting, that have made this one of the best of the mother of all talk shows. I hope you will agree. If you do, come back on Sunday. Well, we'll be somewhere else, but hoping still to meet you. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.